also don't hear is that there are a number of things going on right now that are ramping up for war. You know, the fact that this famous story about just last week, there was a major attack by Israel into Syria, probably to bomb a weapons stash or convoy that was shipping probably rockets into Hezbollah from.
Yes.
And in fact, the area where it struck, there is a prophecy about it. I was just looking at it today as I was reviewing the book, and I described in the book the area where if a Syrian-Israeli part of this war was triggered, it would be through this supply line. This very same supply line may have been described in classical language by Nostradamus in his geographical prophecy about a blow that would bring in Syria. And so when I look at it again, given what happened last week, that was an open provocation. Israel hasn't bombed a Syrian target since 2003. And you have also 350...
When John says last week, folks, this is going to be about 2 weeks ago when you hear this program. But go ahead, John.
Yeah. The British Hussar Regiment, 350 soldiers that moved out of the palace in Basra, are being repositioned on the border with Iran. There was at one time as many as 10,000 U.S. soldiers doing a drill, a rehearsal on the Iraqi side of the southern border with Iran. There is going to be an attempt soon to cut off all traffic of weapons through the main conduits of Abadan in Khorramshahr in the Iranian side, over the Shatt al-Arab into the approaches to Basra, which is where most of the heavy weaponry, the new missiles that the Iranians are giving the Shias to launch on American bases that are something like 400-millimeter missiles. And you see both sides itching to fulfill their prophecies, trying to create an incident. Israel tried to create an incident with Syria.
And Syria was unresponsive. And what does that tell us? It tells us that somebody's trying to avoid this because they don't think they can win.
Yeah, and Syria certainly is the odd man out in this because, there would be directly hit by Israel, and Iran's a harder target to hit. Anyone who's flown over the country, as I have on my many trips back and forth to India, one can marvel at how mountainous. If you think about California, Sierra Nevada, imagine a dozen Sierra Nevadas rolling one after the other like the Appalachian foothills outside of Washington, D.C., only these are like 12,000-foot mountain ranges. And with deep valleys and mountainous terrain, and we know how difficult it is to attack from the air and get all your targets because of the Kosovo incident.
Right.
NATO tried this with Serbia over the Albanian question.
Well, the West has had a long history of hostility with Persia, of course, beginning with the Greeks and the eventual defeat of the Persian King Darius at the Battle of Salamis, then extending into the Roman Empire, where there was a 300-year kind of armed face-off between Parthia, which had been Persia, and the Roman Empire, and the Romans could never conquer them, and it was, of course, again, because of terrain. The only reason the Greeks succeeded was that the Persians came out into Greece, they invaded, and that turned out to be a grave mistake. And so now here we are, and this country, which has remained ferociously independent all of this time, unlike other parts of the Middle East, it's never been colonized by anybody. The biggest attempt to colonize it was the Shah, who was a client of the United States, and he lasted only a few 20, 30 years, and then he was gone. So now we have Iran almost a rogue state. And do you believe, I know, I'm very well aware of the fact that the Syrians play a a kind of a game. In other words, they'll give Hezbollah as much as they can, but then when Israel lashes out at them, they back off. Iran, what happens? What does Iran do if we attack?
Well, first off, one of the huge strategic errors of perception that is being made, and I mean getting reports from people, naval officers on those very same carriers that are on station in the Persian Gulf, that some of the people that talk down to them from the government, our government, don't even know the fact that Iranians aren't Arabs. And that there is an entire different race, an entirely different culture, and to add to your overview historically about people who tried to conquer Iran or Persia, the only time the Persian Empire fell was to Alexander the Great. And Alexander the Great did the one thing that the Romans didn't do and that the Greeks didn't do. He assimilated Hellenistic culture with Persian culture. And that was one of the reasons why, up until his death, and later, as his empire broke up amongst his generals, the Seleucid Empire and the other empires survived because they assimilated. What I'm saying, my point being, is they listened to their enemy, and that helped them not be their enemy anymore. They shared. They were into intercultural experience. Whenever the Aryan Persians have been faced off by a group that is haughty and it does not respect or even listen to their culture or their complaints, they never win. Now